Hey everyone, I'm Darky, and you're watching the first episode of our tutorial for the level editor we have for Boat Crew. In this episode, we're going to show you how we can make a simple mission and what the most fundamental parts of making a level are. So, we should begin by adding some terrain. First, to do that, I'm going to press Tab and switch to the terrain editing mode. Keep in mind that you spawn at the 0 point. This is always the case, and so you should make your maps based on that. So I'm going to make a small island here, just as a backdrop and scenery. And left mouse button allows you to paint. You use right mouse button to reduce the height. And you can also set this to set height mode, and it will automatically increase the height of the circle until it is at the target height. So if I increase this, it's not very noticeable this far up, but if you zoom in, you can somewhat tell that there's a height difference. So yeah, I think this is a neat little terrain. You can experiment with this tool for yourself and make the shape you want. It's quite straightforward, and I hope you will not find it lacking when it comes to making the terrain you want for your missions. So to begin with, we're going to set a start node. I'm going to press S to enable snapping to grid. If I press it again, as you can see, I can move this freely. But we want to keep it tidy, so I'm just going to press I'm going to enable snap to grid. So you might notice this orange circle. That's the activation range for the mission, right? And that means once the player boat is within this area, it starts a mission. And you can enter the parameters here. If you're making a challenge, you can set its difficulty here. So for example, let's say this is a 3-star challenge. Target time, this is used for purposes of score calculation. And target score, again, this is the amount of score you need to get S rank. So usually we set this to, I think it was 55,000. I don't know. It's been a while. I would have to check. But basically, only the name part probably concerns you unless you're making a challenge. So let's call this test scenario. And then we can move on to the next step, which would be to add a waypoint. Now, waypoints are the fundamental node we use. They're used both for pathing units. You don't have to pick them, but if you want units to take a specific route, you can use waypoints. But they're also, as the name implies, waypoints for the player to travel to. So if I put it here, this creates this objective for the player where they need to go to this waypoint to trigger something. And what that something is, for example, this could be a spawner, right? So if I make something like this, what happens here is the player spawns in at 0. This always happens. They trigger the mission start node, because they're within the circle. And then if they travel to this waypoint, they have to get within the detection range, which you can adjust here. And once they do, this will start a spawner tied to the waypoint, which is a riverboat. And if you bypass range, then it's just going to ignore this range, and it will always be triggered as long as it's the current phase and all the other requirements are fulfilled. Now this spawner, it's got respawn options. If you press it, this boat will continuously respawn, like as soon as it's dead. And critical means that this unit must be destroyed as an objective so that the waypoint can progress. So the phase can increment. So if we do something like this, and let's put this on bypass range as well, this boat has to be sunk so the mission can travel from this waypoint to this waypoint. Otherwise, this waypoint will not appear until you sink this boat. So, and for the river boat, we can just make a copy of this and spawn another one here. Now let's suppose we want to change these spawners. We can pick both of them by dragging like this, and then we can change them to any other unit. So let's say a riverboat is not enough. We want a small subchaser instead. And now these are both small subchasers. We're using the same logic we used for both Cherry when it comes to unit selection. So it should be fairly easy to navigate these menus and add the units you want. So, and finally, we should add another waypoint. And hold on. Yeah. So we add another waypoint. We're not going to make this bypassed. We're just going to put it here. And the reason for that is we want the player to travel to it. We can give it a name. Hello is its name. Oh, sorry, I pressed tab there. And the statement is, I'm a waypoint. And finally, we want the mission to end at some point, right? So we put an end node here, and by default it's set to bypass range, and you can also set it to fail. So basically, let's say in this case we want the player to 1, right? So we're not going to set that. And bypass range means you can just also use this as a, like without a waypoint, and just use the detection range. But using a waypoint is probably best practice here, so we can just set it to bypass range by default. So again, what should happen here is that the player spawns in on 0, 0. This waypoint is immediately activated because it bypasses range, and it spawns a small subchaser. And then, once the subchaser is sunk, it moves on to this waypoint, which is also triggered right away because it bypasses range, and then another small subchaser is spawned. And after that's sunk, the player is asked to travel here because the detection range is limited there. It does not bypass range. And once the player gets here, this triggers the end node, and thus ending the mission. And one last thing we should do before putting this all to test, we press Q for a settings node. Settings node allows you to configure time of day, weather intensity, and it also allows you to change your loadout. Now I like stormy weather, so that's what I'm going to go for. The boat will be a Hawkins boat, and we can configure the loadout here very easily. So let's do that quickly. By default, we have the default loadout like we do in the campaign, so you don't really have to think too much about it if you don't want to, if you just want to get into the action right away. So yeah, the crew was also ready, and there we go. This should be a complete mission. So all we need to do is to just press save and play. So as expected, we see a single sub chaser in the beginning. That's done. A second one spawns as expected. So as you can see, the name appears on the waypoint itself, and its statements appears on the sidebar here. When you set a unit as critical, the game will automatically read that as and create it as a destroy objective. And there we go. We won this mission, and now we're treated to an end screen, which works the same as it does in challenges, and it allows you to see your score, see how you did. So obviously we got an S rank because the target time was 10 minutes, and we did it in just 1 minute. So basically you need to play the mission yourself and then benchmark it. So if you want to have a balanced challenge, you're gonna have to play through it yourself. So that's all for the first episode. We're gonna make this series in small videos, like bite-sized reference videos that you can access easily. So there will be more of these. There's a bunch of stuff to talk about the level editor. It's a tool that's simple to understand, simple to get into, but it takes some time to master it. So we're looking forward to what you guys create with it. Feel free to also ask questions about it on the community forums or on Discord. Yeah, we're really excited to get this in your hands and hear all feedback you have on it. Thanks again.